Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Loreweek. I am your host, Lore Dude, the lore guy who lures it up on occasion. Got my 3DS here. I just want to showcase something because I don't have much to share with the, I usually like to do my little pre-ramble to allow people to show up, right? Makes sense? I don't have much to talk about this time, except for how amazingly awesome everything is. No, that's a lie. I want to share something about Bravely Default for you guys, because I decided that I want to just crush the game like a bug. So I sat down, looked at my options for a bit, and I set up a combo, and I've basically been beating every single boss with this combo. When I say every boss, I mean the times when you fight 4 bosses in the same battle. I've been just absolutely crushing them. So, as part of my preamble, here's my setup for anybody who cares or is interested in trying this out. First we have, let's see here. How's the audio volume, by the way? I've had to readjust it a few times this week for streaming and recording. So, first of all, we start off with Tiz, who is a freelancer who has the job ability of Sing and the support ability of Speed Up and Hasten World, as well as Auto Phoenix. What he does on his action is he casts, he braves twice, so he gets 2 actions. Then he casts My Hero, which gives everyone a BP, and then he mimics it, which gives everyone a BP for free. Then we have Agnes. Now she is a Dark Knight who has the Sword Magic command, and equipped she has Gloom, Power Attack 10% up, that's from Monk, Power Attack 20% up, that's from... Why am I quiet? Am I quiet for anyone else? There's no reason I should be quiet. Nothing has changed about anything. Power Attack 20% up, that's from Pirate, and Shorten Ailment, which I believe is from the Alchemist guy. She uses her action to brave 4 times, casts Drain, and then casts Dark Nebula 3 times, which hits everyone for quad damage. And by everyone, I mean also the party. I'll get to that in a second. Then I have Ring-a-Bell, who is a Spirit Master with White Magic equipped. His support abilities are Steady MP Recover, that's from Conjurer, Auto Shell, which is from Spirit Master, Holy One, which is from Spirit Master, and Speed 10% up. Why is it quiet? There's nothing has changed. There is nothing different. Why am I quieter? I have changed nothing. Was I quiet yesterday? Is it because I have BattleNet up? There, I no longer have BattleNet up. Is it better now? Jesus Christ. He spends his turns, again, for Brave. And first thing he does is he casts Esunaga on everyone, getting rid of any stat effects that may or may not be there. And then he casts, what's the name of the spell? Is this it? Fairy's Aid on Agnes, the one doing dark damage, to make it so that she does quad 9 damage to the entire party. And then he casts Curaga, and then Curaga again on everyone. Adia is a pirate who has the Bushido ability equipped. She has, for her support abilities, Power Attack 20% up from Pirate, Short Ailment, Power Protect 20% up, and Adversity from Dark Knight. She casts Free Lunch, again, for Brave. She casts Free Lunch, and then does Amped Strike, Amped Strike, Amped Strike. Also, everyone has a Dark Shield equipped. What this means is that every single round of combat, I get to do a quad Brave on everyone, get all of my bravery back by the end of 1 turn. So everyone goes to -4 and then goes right back up to 0. I hit the entire enemy for quad 9 dark damage 3 times, which heals me. I heal everyone just in case I've taken damage. I cure any status effects just in case I've taken status effects. And I also hit a single target for quad 9 3 times physical damage. Oh, also I have the ribbon on Ring-a-Bell, the White Mage, so he doesn't take status effects regardless of what's happening. My little power combo, for anybody who's curious. I have literally been auto-battling my way through the entire game ever since I set that up. I am quite pleased with the results. So, hi everyone, by the way. Now that I've bored you with that, I'm going to bore you with something else. You like being bored, right? Otherwise you wouldn't be in my channel. Look, it's okay. I know I'm boring. It is all good. Oh, it's really broken, Leander. It is stupid broken. The only thing that's even come close to causing any damage to me was one particular quad setup, which was Aminos. I don't remember all the names. It was the Black Mage, the Summoner, the Conjurer, and the Alchemist. Because the Alchemist would Volnus to fire, the Black Mage would Firaga everything, and then the Conjurer would cast the equivalent of Ifrit, and it sucked. Agreed, Cashel. Actually, it's funny you say that, Gary, because if someone asked me my opinion right now of Bravely Default, I'd say the story is kind of boring. Legitimately. I don't actually care for it that much. Gameplay is freaking amazing. It's one of the best designed JRPGs I've ever seen in my life. Lol. Chocolate Rob. I'm sure that was funny. Let's talk about Twitch really quick. For those of you not aware, they have this new thing, a new Twitch extension, which you can get, I believe, right now, called the Twitch Prime Subscription and Loot Reminder extension. A little bit of a mouthful there. It's a thing that will set it up so that there's this little icon in the upper right that will pop up if you currently have a Twitch Prime subscription you have not given out. It will also tell you if you have any Twitch Prime loot, either in terms of loot or a game that you otherwise don't have. At the moment, this is only available on desktop. They are apparently going to be pushing this out for the phone app later. Now, yeah, no kidding, hazardous. Let me just go ahead and be blunt and say that I think this is not the best thing they could do. I don't know how to install Twitch extensions. I don't use them myself, but I know they're a thing. I really am actually irritated that they didn't just make Twitch Prime subs, like give us an option to say auto resub, boop, Just, it doesn't sound like a difficult thing to me. Right? Just boop, done. But this is the closest thing we've got to that. It's a little thing that should be showing up like right up here in the upper upper right corner. That's right. We're like, hey, you have a Twitch Prime sub you haven't used. So, shrug. I will also mention that the fact that it gives you the loot spam is kind of irritating. At first, it looked like they were going to be trying to use this to push adverts. However, thankfully, it looks like they are not. So, I just thought I'd give everyone kind of a heads up on that. It is far too complicated to do what is basically an extremely simple if-then statement. Oh my god. How much am I rambling? 8 minutes? That probably sounds like about enough. Yeah, but I understand and disagree, Gary. You know what I mean? All I'm going to say about the Bravely Default series, again, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant game design. I actually have a list somewhere, I'm not sure where it is, of all the things that Bravely Default does right from a game design perspective. It's a huge list. It's an amazing, amazing game. But the story is incredibly cliched, like to the point where it's actually kind of a bad thing. And some of the story construction is kind of off, and I don't want to talk about the rest because that gets into spoiler territory. So let's not do that. Yeah, because it's so difficult to have something that says you don't have a Prime sub and then you unsub. I mean, that's not difficult to do. We have the same basic thing for a subscription fee. Like, if I subscribe to WoW, just hear me out, and put in a thing for a 6-month subscription, which is what I do, and then 6 months comes up and my credit card has changed for whatever reason, maybe my bank had to issue me a new one because of some fraud crap, right? That happens. Then it just doesn't resub. It's not that hard. No, I know you're joking, Permies. I'm just making the point that this is ridiculous. Anyways. So, who's looking forward to Infinity War? Anyone? Why does this keep doing this? There we go. Is no one looking forward to Infinity War? You guys make me sad. No one wants Infinity War. We've only been waiting for it for literally 10 years. No, literally. Iron Man 1 came out in 2008. Think about that for a second. It has been a decade. 10 years we've been building up to this. It's actually unheard of. This is the first time this has ever happened in cinematic history. We've never had a build-up like this in films, ever. The closest we've had is, like, going back to an existing franchise when it wasn't planned. We've never had a deliberate build-up to something like this across 10 years in cinematic history. There we go. 10,000 years. Yeah, no kidding, Landers. I'm very excited. For those of you not aware, I'm sorry, I gotta give you a quick story. Real quick. For those of you not aware, I schedule all my stuff way in advance. I actually have a calendar, which I jot down notes on. I currently have all of my ruminations scheduled up to June. So I know everything I'm doing up till June. I've already got all of that scheduled out. I don't put all of that on the website until I'm 100% sure about it. But I do try to be on top of that sort of a thing. Now you might be like, okay, why does this matter? Well, funny little story. Knowing that the MCU Phase 1 ruminations got voted in, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and line it up so my next series of ruminations going across April is going to be MCU Phase 1, so that I would then, the rumination on the Avengers would come out on May 4th. What do you mean, Bartman Dilemma? Anyways, then they moved it forward a week. Now, the doubly funny part about this is I had just scheduled everything out pretty much the day that happened. And put it all up on the website, and it was ready to go. And then they changed everything around, so I had to completely readjust the entire schedule to move everything forward 1 week. Thankfully, I could do that. I just had to shove Blade Runner 2049 out of there. And be done with that. But yeah, no, I am not counting 08 Hulk, for several reasons I will discuss in the Iron Man 1 video when we get there. It's nothing against Iron Man Hulk. It's nothing against 08's Hulk. That's not really the problem. It's just that, I mean, let's be blunt, it's not really part of the MCU in any matter that actually matters. In fact, if not for literally one line in Avengers, you could pretend it never existed at all. And it was literally done with a different philosophy, which I'll talk about more when we get to Iron Man 1. Don't worry, I'll talk about it. And when I say I'll talk about it, I've actually already recorded that video. The Iron Man 1 video. Anyways. So, the next thing I want to mention, though, because really this Infinity War woo, what I really want to talk about is marketing. Because... this is too loud. That's why. How many of you out there have watched my show for any length of time? And how many of you out there know how much I rail about marketing over and over and over, and have done so for years, since before I actually even had a show? It's actually frustrating to look at something that so many people do so wrong. Just to put that as bluntly as possible. I knew it, Permeus. What's your name again? Tabrin something? I don't know. The marketing rants. Let's talk about marketing, because recently there was a tweet connection campaign. Basically, Robert Downey Jr.'s Twitter account was tweeting at the official, the Disney MCU Marvel tweet. And it was like, Robert Downey Jr. And they just kind of did this conversation back and forth for a bit. And you could just hear the tone. Like, I'm sure most of you, if you've read what I'm talking about, you could hear the tone of Tony Stark as Robert Downey Jr. is posting these. And it led with, hey, can I invite some of my friends to this earlier showing? And they're like, well, how many of your friends? And he says, well, how about everyone in the world? Okay, we can do that, Tony. Or not Tony. You can do that, Robert. Yeah. We'll go ahead and move it forward. And then that's when the announcement was given that they were moving the release forward to the 27th. Yeah, no kidding, Lander. My reason for bringing this up is that was a brilliant marketing move. It generated tons of buzz. Everyone who was paying attention to Twitter noticed it, and they let everyone else know. That's generally how that kind of story progression goes when it comes to announcements and trying to... And it was cheap! Now, it wasn't free, but it was very, very cheap to do. All they had to do was have people script it out, because that was scripted, I guarantee you. All they had to do was have someone script it out, and they had to have someone who probably wasn't actually Robert Downey Jr. on his Twitter, and have someone on the other Twitter talking back. And all they had to do was do this back and forth thing, and then have, like, the graphic presented and blah, blah, blah. Way cheaper than most of this other garbage that they do. This was good marketing, and it wasn't blowing money on garbage. It has generated increased hype and discussion about the films, which is great, because one of the most important things here is, when it comes to marketing in general, is generating awareness. To explain what I mean a little bit by that, too many people, this is going to sound weird, too many people think that marketing is about convincing someone to buy your product. Now, that's kind of obviously the last goal of marketing, but it's not the initial goal. You don't market in order to convince people to buy your thing, you market to make people aware of your thing. Then you have to do other stuff in order to get them to actually buy it. And I feel too many people miss that little disconnect between those two things. This generates huge amount of awareness, because, of course, people knew Infinity War was coming anyways, but now people are talking about it. Now it's in the news, right? You see the direction I'm going with this. Now, I could talk about why they moved it. There's two very obvious reasons. One, they wanted it to be a worldwide release, and the other is that they want to push, they want to spread out the movie schedule across this year, because they've got, I think, 3. No, maybe it's 4. The overall Disney umbrella of films has multiple films coming out this year, and they want to stretch those out a little bit more, and they don't want to have direct competition with things that they don't really need. Right? And yeah, we've hardly had any trailers for Infinity War. We don't need them. I've given that point so many times too. Yes, it's also harder for spoilers to leak out. You see why I'm praising this move? This is actually a really great move that they did here. And it's astonishing to me. Bartman Dilemma asked earlier, why, if this is good marketing, why isn't it happening more often? I can actually answer that question, and this is going to be an incredibly cynical answer, but here you go. The reason why is because people who work in marketing are not interested in doing good marketing. They're interested in keeping their jobs. And good marketing and marketing people keeping their jobs, believe it or not, does not necessarily congruent with each other. Right? I mean, I know that sounds weird, but it's the age-old contract worker, consultant. You remember the consultant loop? Anyone remember that from the 90s? Anyone remember when... Ah! Anyone remember the fear of the consultant loop? Thank you very, very much, Theogor. As ever, those Twitch Prime subs are hugely appreciated, especially now. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The consultant loop, for those of you who don't remember this is a very broken down version of it. It was this whole mess. It was basically one step away from being a scam, but it was a legal scam. It works like this. Consultants show up and are like, hey, your business needs issues, needs changes. Let me tell you how to change your structure, your business models. Okay. So then the consultant has helped you with that. And then once that change has been implemented, so you need a consultant to tell you how to change, you need a consultant to implement the change, and then you need a consultant to tell you how to deal with the fact that things have changed. It created a giant ball of fear, is what I'm trying to say. Thank you very much, Progue. As ever, those Twitch Prime subs are very, very much appreciated. Thank you. Ah! I'm afraid, guys, we got a combo going on here. Excuse me, combo. Thank you again. Oh God, I'm gonna fail miserably with this pronunciation. I'm gonna go with Wyhen, or is it Wigan? Or is it Wigan? God, I am terrible. Thank you very, very much. Again, that is hugely appreciated, and I am still very grateful for it. Thank you. Background music is still loud. Here's the funny thing. If I turned it down anymore, this is what it sounds like. It's literally at 1% volume. I don't know why it's so damn loud. I can just turn this down, I suppose. Or I could just give up and just get rid of it entirely. Bzz. Who needs music, am I right? Let's listen to the music that matches everything. That nobody will be able to hear. No, it's not you, it's just frustrating to me, because I put a song down to 1%. 1%! At -9 decibels, and it's just... So, Wigan. Okay. Thank you very much, Wigan. Or is it Wigan? Because I'm terrible about pronunciations. You can ask anybody. Even Darkrai hates my thing. Words. Right. So, I guess actually that's really all I have to say about that, as weird as that may sound. It's just nice to see some good marketing on display and some good presentation and not burning money. I think that's the part that pisses me off most about bad marketing, is because it is a money sink. It's a gold sink, right? It's something that real money and time, and also money from time, is being tossed into a hole where it doesn't need to be. Like, people complain about how expensive things are to make. People complain about how costly it is to do certain projects. People complain about how they need this kind of income. And then they're just throwing money in a freaking hole. Like just picture a barrel that's on fire and they're just tossing money into it. That's what marketing is these days. And that's why it gets to me so badly. It is literal waste. Moving on. I bet nobody can even hear the music now. So, next topic is this one. The next topic after this will be this one. Yeah, games are too expensive. Uh-huh. Have you heard about how there's so much with regards to things? Yes, I have heard about Aethel, although that's actually a more complicated situation than it sounds like. But yes, thank you very, very much, CyberSage. I know I've said this like 4 times recently, but it is still appreciated. I am still thankful. Thank you. I do remember what Wendy's did. That was a long time ago, but I remember that. Good marketing campaign can mean a world of difference. Like with Iron Man 1. How many of you remember that? Just real quick. I was studying this just recently this last week, because like I said, I've already done the Iron Man 1 video. How many of you remember the marketing campaign when Iron Man 1 was coming out? It's good stuff. What's going to happen in Infinity War? Everyone's going to die. Every single character is going to die. And we're going to bring in all the new actors who are going to be cheaper and who don't have contracts. Now, let's talk about preferences. How many of you out there like black licorice? Don't worry, I really am going somewhere with this. But you know I like food analogies, and I think this is the perfect analogy for me. That doesn't quite fit. There we go. Perfect. That's my new thing. Hello, Dakota. I'm seeing pretty much the responses I expected in chat. Some people, some people, bleh, and then some people, what's that? Marmite is a good secondary choice, but I like to use black licorice because black licorice actually has some personal significance to me. Because, see, when I was younger, I believe I was about 8 at the time, 8 or 7, something like that. My grandfather loves, I believe it's Good and Plenty, which is black licorice candy. And I was like, oh, wow, I can't wait to try this out. Nom, nom. Black licorice, well, first of all, I vomited. This is not a joke, by the way. I actually threw up pretty much on the spot. It was so gross to me. It was so unpleasant that I threw it up like that. Whoop, hang on. There we go. It was bad. And I'm like, oh my god. And that, as weird as this may sound, that was kind of a big moment for me, because it was the moment when I personally understood, or as I like to say, agnoscoed, the reality of preference. Because, here's the thing. If I like the Justice League movie, and I did, come at me, I liked it, right? But it's probably easier for you guys to understand that I liked it, because it was okay. I mean, I'm not praising it as one of the best things ever, because it wasn't. It actually had really, really, really significant issues, and probably could have had entire scenes just flat cut from the movie, and it would have been a better film. But I did still have a net positive experience there, you know, just over the bar kind of a thing, right? Dragon Age 2. You know, I enjoyed Dragon Age 2. And that's probably relatively easy for to understand. That's in a weird place. That shouldn't be there. Where's the boss thingy? There we go. It's out of position. Thank you, Easel. That's probably easy to understand, because that's just something I kind of like and that you don't like. In other words, to put this on a graph, okay, we got super like and super hate, right? So I'm like, sorry, this is like, so I'm like here and you're like here. This isn't much distance. This is easy to understand. This is easy to cognate. It's like, yeah, okay, whatever. Okay, right? You get it? It's not that hard to understand someone liking something that you just sort of dislike or kind of like, right? It's when you get to the extremes that I've noticed some people, especially on the internet, but I've had this happen in real life too. Some people don't seem to legitimately understand when the distance of preference is so large. And that's why I bring this to black licorice, because I have actually had friends and family who have stopped eating black licorice in my presence as a courtesy, because the smell of it will trigger my gag reflex. That is how much I hate black licorice. It's not just that I kind of don't like it. I can't stand black licorice. The thought of anyone legitimately enjoying that is a completely alien thought to me. And yet people do. I have multiple people I know in person who like black licorice. 2 members of my family and at least 2 friends I could think of. One still friend and then one not. Right? That kind of a gap was something I had to learn. Now again, I was lucky. I learned that when I was 8. Like I said, black licorice. It taught me that there can be something that I can despise that other people can truly enjoy. Whereas I really legitimately, honestly feel that some people have never learned that lesson. That some people can't look at... Let me try for a more extreme example. Final Fantasy Mystic Quest is a game I like. Now, I don't love it, but I do like it. But I also know some people who basically spit on Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, who look at that game and say, that is garbage. That is awful. Why would anyone even remotely like that game? And I've had people who have thought I was joking, or that I was being a hipster, or that I was liking it because it's, because it's the hip thing to do, and to like something, that other people don't like. I've been accused of this so many times in my life, even before I started this show. And I feel like this concept of understanding preference, that's why I call it that, understanding preferences, understanding and cognating that it is possible for someone to love or like something that you hate, is a lesson I legitimately feel more human beings need to learn. Because at that point in time, you reach a little bit more of a tolerance and understanding for someone else, for other people's capacities. Yeah, ProZD, as usual, has brought this thing up. I mean, right? I could use all sorts of examples on this one. This is actually a topic I've been sitting on for about a month at this point, because we kept having other things coming up. Yeah, ProZD is great, and I will never be as good or as big as he is. Maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. Chrono Cross. I can't stand Chrono Cross. Now, granted, I haven't played it in a while. I would like to go back and do a replay of that game sometime and find out how much fear there is. Thank you very, very much, Mr. Good Cat. I feel like I've said it a lot this morning, but it's still very much appreciated. Thank you. I can't stand Chrono Cross. You know what? I got one that has gotten me a lot of bile over the years. I don't like Mitsuda's music. What's his name? Oh, shoot. What is his name? Hang on. Yasunori. I don't like Yasunori Mitsuda's music. In fact, I would go so far as to say that I despise Yasunori Mitsuda's music. I got a comment about that yesterday. That's how much crap I get for that opinion. Because some people think, and I've gotten people who think, what's wrong with you? I've gotten some people who say, oh, it's, yeah, sure, uh-huh. I've gotten some people say, oh, so you just have a bad, bad perspective or bad opinions. Right? How many times have you heard this kind of a concept? Mitsuda has made the music for Xenogears, Chrono Cross, and I don't remember what else. Don't bring up Chrono Trigger. I've already explained that one. He has done some songs in Chrono Trigger, though. Paul Romero? I don't remember off the top of my head, as it is. But yeah, I have bad opinions, because I don't like Yasunori Mitsuda's music. I don't like anime. That's another one that comes up a lot. You know how many times that's been an issue for me? Okay, so he did... so Xenogears, Chrono Cross... He did some of Shadow Hearts, the Shadow Hearts series. He did the music for Xenosaga. Oh, goody. Deep Labyrinth. I'm not recognizing a lot of these. Wow, yeah, I don't recognize most of these. Looks like he's only doing like a couple songs in a lot of these, though. Yeah, I guess that's about it. So that's what he's done. He actually has done a lot. Yay. Let me check. Where was Xenosaga 1? Where was it? Oh, there it is. No, that's Xenogears. He's listed as the only music credit. Oh, no, okay. Apparently he worked with Takahashi, who was the guy who also worked on Xenogears, so maybe that's part of it. Anyways, whatever. Point being... So yeah, you get this concept. Getting back to my point, without joking, without exaggerating, I feel that if human beings, if people understood preference better, we would have a better world. I know that sounds like a really weird sentence to say, but I believe that legitimately and wholeheartedly. The very fact that someone can look at someone and give those kind of comments. And I know every single one of you in chat have had that happen at least once in your life, where someone has said, you can't possibly like such and such, or you can't possibly dislike such and such. You know, I use Black Licorice as my example, but actually the first time I ever got called out for my opinion was Elvis. I can't stand Elvis's music. Elvis actually was what I used to call coffee back in the day. Most people didn't understand that, so I kind of switched over to the coffee analogy. Because Elvis was a very talented individual who really knew what he was doing, and arguably was the originator of a lot of different aspects of music and music culture. That doesn't mean I don't, so I can give him credit for his skill, but I can't stand Elvis's music. And I've had people who have basically... I have had people in person actually yell at me, as in full volume, for not liking Elvis's music, because there's just something wrong with me. Also, I don't like the Beatles. Yeah, that's the whole point of coffee. That's the whole point of that statement, Tazara. That's why it's my most used Lorium, and I've been using it for years. You don't like JRPGs? What's wrong with you, Wigan? Oh my god. This is my impersonation of a typical internet goer. Anywho. Whoa, that made me a little dizzy. I just wanted to kind of talk about that because it's just been bugging me. I don't even remember what prompted it. It was, like I said, this topic came up a month ago, and I kept pushing it off because I had real news to talk about, which I don't have this week. Keep yelling, Kensington. I have terrible opinions. Let's talk about... So, okay. Cookie Monster. Cookies. What am I at? 35 minutes. Let's... So, okay. I am going to spoil the last episode of Star Wars Rebels that came out, okay? I cannot talk about what I want to talk about without spoiling the last episode of Star Wars Rebels. If you care, this is your warning. Now, this isn't a huge spoiler, but it is a spoiler. And I do want to make that nice and clear. It's why it's in the stream thing, too. Stream title. I haven't watched it yet, Mandartin. Still haven't. I mean, I've seen the scene in question, but that's only because of Darkrai. There is no other topic. You know what the next topic is? Assassin's Creed Origins. Yeah, it was a sled. Sorry, guys. Spoilers! It was a sled. It was a sled. I haven't had time to watch it, Mandarin. You know what my yesterday was? Wake up, stream, stop stream, record, stop record, go to bed. That was my day. This isn't a complaint, by the way. That's just my life. I'm actually quite accustomed to it. So, no, I don't have time to watch Rebels. Yeah, of course, Anthony. I've done that more than once. I could probably talk to you a lot about Clone Wars. You know, I think I've only seen all of Clone Wars once total. No, Aethel. I'm kind of just chilling here for a moment because I want to make sure everyone has plenty of warning to pause things or to cancel things or to hit pause or to hit mute or whatever. I'm just chilling for a minute to make sure, you know, we got the spoiler here, okay? Just making really clear. So Star Wars introduced time travel with the last episode of Rebels. By all accounts, it is Type 1 time travel. Quick refresher. There are 3 predominant forms of time travel when it comes to fiction. Point number 1 is what I like to call time as a linear line. God, why am I so off-center? This is weird. I am in the middle of the thing. That's the center of my monitor right there. Why is this weird? Is that better? Anyways, I think the cable got dragged or something. I have actually been fishing several times. Now, hear me out. Before everyone freaks out, hear me out. Let's just discuss the forms of time travel, because I want to talk about this really quick. So, time is a linear line. This means any time you ever time travel, you have always time traveled. Make sense? It's always something that always happened. There's no original timeline. There's no altered timeline. You always did it and will always do it. Make sense? So, time is a linear line. The second form of time travel is altered timeline. So this is, here's your timeline, and then you go back, and you change this, and now this is different from this point on. This is the alterable timeline. It is still one distinct path, if you will. It's just been changed. And the third form of time travel is the everything goes everywhere. Third form of time travel is the kind I dislike the most. I've ranted about it several times before. Third form of time travel is you go back, change this, and then you make another timeline, but the original timeline you left is still there. Make sense? The multiverse. So, this is... So they introduced the first type of time travel into Star Wars. Let's make this clear. Kingdom Hearts is the first type. Kingdom Hearts is Type 1. Everything time travel-wise in Kingdom Hearts has always happened. It's a complete line. Self-fulfilling, if you will. I really need to iron this thing. I don't actually have an iron. I'm going to have to borrow one. What actually happened, for those of you unaware and who are still watching and don't care about spoilers, is during the awesome and epic confrontation, which I have seen. Yeah, Back to the Future actually bounces between these three. It's kind of irritating, actually. But yeah, it's a great series of films, so you just kind of go with it. So, back during the amazing confrontation between Ahsoka and Vader / Anakin, this was a bit ago, you know, and Ahsoka dies. Cut to the most recent episode, and Ezra, I think is his name, the main character, is in a temple that Palpatine has been trying to get access to for a very long time. You can tell I haven't watched this show because I can't even think of the character's name. And he basically, to just summarize a little bit here, he reaches through time, grabs Ahsoka, and drags her from the past into what is at that point in time the present. So, in other words, and again, because this is time as a linear line, she actually never died. This is what always happened. This is how she faded, how she disappeared back when he... And brilliant, by the way, because they made it back... I've seen the scenes. I've actually watched the specific scenes of these points. There's just some really awesome moments with regards to it that... you know what, I'm not going to go into it. It doesn't really matter. The point being, they planned this. They really, really planned this, and the dog is yelling because he's stupid. Well, yes, I know that, Darkrai, but I guess it doesn't matter for the point I'm trying to make. So, now here's what I'm getting to, because honestly, none of this really matters. The time travel thing itself doesn't matter. In fact, its presence within Star Wars Rebels is almost completely irrelevant. Now, they did front load this, which is awesome. That's the first thing I really want to talk about. Yes, I know there's someone at the door. Sorry, I hate that dog. He just sits there and whines in this really, really loud... Like, the fact that you can hear him, he is not nearby. He is through 2 doors and about 40 feet that way. And you can hear him. He whines really, really loudly when his owner gets home, when my roommate gets home, and hasn't yet opened the door. And the dog just sits there whining until he finally opens the door. It drives me batty. Anyways... and he only does it for the owner. Everyone else, he doesn't care. He only does it for his owner. God damn. Just open the door, please. What was I saying? Right. Here's what I was getting to. Here's the point I was trying to reach. Spoilers, Larian! Spoilers! Although I've already spoiled, so I actually have no intention to continue talking about spoilers. The relevant point is that he hasn't opened the door yet. The relevant point is that Star Wars introduced something new. That's the important point right there. Something that has literally never really been in Star Wars has been introduced to Star Wars. And this started to make me think, because this is a topic that's kind of been percolating in the back of my mind for a while now, for a couple of years at this point. And this, I guess what I want to say is I want to open for discussion the possibility of elaboration on long-standing franchises. I know I'm saying this wrong, so let me try to build up to this. Why... I'm going to call myself out from the past, okay? I'm going to yell at myself from the past. I have made the comment more than once that certain works in Star Trek did not feel like Star Trek, right? This was long before Discovery came out, by the way. So I know that's been going around the fan base again recently. But even before Discovery, there are several things I've looked at and said, that doesn't feel like Star Trek to me. I may or may not like it, I may or may not enjoy the work, but I can't really in good conscience call it a Star Trek work. I've actually made this exact same, no, Dakota. Jesus Christ, open the door, dude! I'm not gonna say, I'm calling myself out because I think I disagree with past me at this point. At least from a purely third-party perspective, because we're reaching the point in life, arguably we have now reached the point in life, where we have had franchises that have gone on so long that most of the, for lack of a better way to put it, standard stories within that franchise have been done, right? Like, we can't... There's not much new to be added to Star Trek while still keeping it Star Trek, is the general concept here. And we've had decades... That would be funny, Tazara. But no, I know exactly what was happening, and I was right. You'll notice the whining has stopped. Again, Star Wars. Very relevant point here. You know, the idea that... you know, what is keeping Star Wars? What has the feel or perspective of Star Wars, right? Star Wars, right? Well, that's a separate issue, Aethel, that honestly I think we should just leave alone, because that really is a completely separate, unconnected issue. The reality of it is, after a certain point in time, especially nowadays, franchises aren't going to just die. Not if they have sufficient momentum. Star Wars is a good example of this because Star Wars isn't dying anytime soon. I know some people would like to think it has. I know some people who have already said that it has, but it's not, and it's not going to anytime soon. There's a pretty good chance that my grandchildren will still be able to enjoy and play and work and watch Star Wars, and it will still be going. Anyways, getting back to my point. So, from a purely creative perspective, is there something inherently wrong with stretching out with a pre-existing work? With trying something that isn't Star Trek within Star Trek? With trying something that isn't Star Wars? God, no. Anthony? Oh, you're asking how it didn't. Sorry, I thought you were saying it did. My bad. Toys, games, and books is my answer to you. Yeah, I remember when WoW died. Every year for 13 years. Now, obviously, the most obvious statement here is that, well, if you're going to add something new, do something well. Duh, right? I don't even feel I need to make that point. If you're going to add something new to your franchise, do a good job with it. But I bring this up because this is a topic that's actually been at least a part of my geek circles for years and years and years. Here's a good question for you. How many of you have ever debated what qualifies as a Final Fantasy? How many of you have debated what qualifies as part of the main MCU? If you don't get the joke, we talked about that literally just about 40 minutes ago. Well, I don't care for them, Maz. But, you know, how many of you have debated what qualifies as, I don't know, what qualifies as something that should be considered Star Trek-y enough, like something that feels Star Trek? I've heard that discussion since I was in the single digits for years, right? This is not a new topic. Oh yeah, Doctor Who, that's another long-standing one. This is not a new topic. It just isn't. This is but I find myself wondering if there's anything necessarily wrong with, for example, adding time travel to Star Wars. Now, I mention this because I have flat out stated before that such and such does not belong in Star Wars. I have made that statement. I still kind of think that way, but I have to admit, looking at Star Wars, I'm like, is that necessarily wrong? As long as they do something good with it, as long as they portray it in a decent way, or tell a decent story, or go somewhere with it, is it wrong to introduce something to Star Wars, or to any other long-standing franchise, that doesn't belong? That isn't core to the central blah, 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 right? Qualifies as canon. Yeah, it's another one, Leander. I've had that topic like 4 times in my own show. It's just weird to look at this because, and here's the thing, my first knee-jerk reaction was, and I'm a little embarrassed to admit this, time travel in Star Wars? Now, I know it's arguable that this isn't quite time travel, but this is more time travel than Star Wars has basically ever been. Like, they have had vague prophecies of the future, vague visions of what could happen, which sometimes have been close to accurate and sometimes have been completely inaccurate. But this is a lot closer to legitimately altering with the timeline than has ever been introduced. Now, Uh, I'm not sure about that, Ethel. I will say most people when I talk to about Ahsoka, uh, speak in positive manner about her. Also, what are you talking about with the EU time travel? Remind me, just because I'm curious. Um, Unless you're talking about the flow. Yeah, never mind. That's God. What was that from? That was from the. Was that from the Jedi Kids books? Hey, Freckles. Yeah, I remember Jason being able to see the past and being completely manipulated by it. I always like to think that Jason was actually not literally seeing the past, but seeing a particular view of the past in order to try and change his mind and lead him in a certain direction. That's just my headcanon on that one. Yeah, they also had Stargates. Hell, they had the freaking, what was it, Centerpoint Station? Anyways, getting back to my point. Yeah, my first thought was, oh, this is terrible. Wait, hold up. Hold up. Let me take a moment and really think about this. Hang on. Because, again, it depends on how well they do it. Now, the biggest concern for me, from a purely creative perspective, is how far they go with it. Because I do think that there is such a thing as going too far in a new direction. I'm trying to think of a really stark contrast. Imagine for a moment Star Trek Game of Thrones. That's probably a bad example. Just bear with me for a second, okay? You know what? Let's go with a less horrible example. Let's go with Breaking Bad, okay? Now, for the record, I am not saying Breaking Bad is a bad show. But I want you to imagine that there is a new Star Trek show which focuses on a Ferengi and, I don't know, a Vulcan who are making drugs and becoming drug lords in all of the horrible, realistic, gritty unpleasantness that involves, right? That they are really doing the whole Breaking Bad shtick in Star Trek. Now, at that point, we might have gone a little bit too far off the rails, depending on what they do with it, which again gets back to that, but you get my point. Trying to do a show like that might be stretching that just a little bit too far in the wrong direction, in my opinion. But at the same time, I'm not even sure of my own opinion on this one, because that's just such a weird, out there idea. Now, as Aeth already mentioned, the simple answer is why not just do something else, right? And there are answers for that. The most obvious answer, just to cover this really quickly, is because Star Trek has name brand recognition. The end, right? Name brand recognition, the end. That's the predominant reason why these stories continue, even though they might be better suited in another universe, or even a unique universe. Now I'm thinking about it. Breaking Bad rumination. Nope. Not happening. Thankfully. I don't want to do that. I have a pretty strong no television policy because my television schedule is a little bit full. What's funny is I mentioned Game of Thrones and people are already talking about political Star Trek. That'd be awesome. And I agree. That's not the part of Game of Thrones I was thinking about when I mentioned that. Yeah, sure, Mandartin, whatever. I mean, maybe not. I don't know. Let's actually keep spoilers on Rebels to a minimum. We've got a spoiler channel for that in the Discord if you want to talk about it there. Yeah, exactly, Max Time. I was thinking of the parts of Game of Thrones I actively dislike. The reason I stopped watching that show. See, I'm sorry, I'm kind of quiet now because now I'm really debating. I'm really debating my own point. I just kind of wanted to open this for discussion. That's the whole reason I wanted to add this is, what happens when we add insert concept or insert presentation into show X or franchise B? I know, right, Anthony? Hmm. Because now I'm picturing it. Let's assume they did do Game of Thrones Star Trek. Now, let me make this very clear. When I say Game of Thrones Star Trek, I mean sex, violence, breaking people's skulls with bare hands, incest, torturing people with rats, you know, that kind of a thing. Now, I want to ask, and I mean this with total legitimacy, what would be your reaction to that? If they came out with a Star Trek show that was just that violent and dark and horrible. Imagine for a moment the story's okay. Let's just move that out of the way. Now, I obviously wouldn't watch it because I don't like that sort of thing, but I'm wanting reactions. It sounds like Romulans. The Expanse. I'm seeing exactly what I expected in chat. Pretty much as many yeses as nos. A bonus question. How many of you said, yeah, I would totally watch that, are actually Star Trek fans? Just because I'm curious. No judgment here, I'm just curious. Part of the reason I bring this up, by the way, is I think at least part of the... I hate to use the word problem. Part of the division amongst Star Trek fandom for Star Trek Discovery is exactly that. That Discovery has been trying to shift into a completely different perspective and position for Star Trek show. And some people are okay with that and some people are not. I also think some understanding preference problem is part of that, but shrug. Hi, Czar. We were just asking if you had a Star Trek show that had lots and lots of nudity and sex and violence and gore and other unpleasantness. Would you what's your jerk, knee-jerk emotional reaction to that? No, not politics. I didn't say politics. You want politics in Star Trek, you go watch Deep Space Nine. I said violence and sex. I'm trying to get to the heart of the matter as quickly and brutally as possible here. Why is my audio low? There's no reason for my audio to be low. Hang on. Let me check something. Make sure no filters got turned on. Nope, none of my filters are on. This is just my mic, like it always is. Ryza? No, that is not Ryza. That is not Ryza at all. Ryza is the Disneyland of sex. It's actually kind of offensive in the opposite direction. It would need to be done for a purpose. Let's assume that it was being done for some good purpose. I have no idea what that is. I can't even imagine something. But let's assume there is some good purpose behind it. And let's assume it is at least net positive storytelling. Like it's at least better than normal, right? See, the thing is, obviously I wouldn't care for it because it's not my thing, but if I take away my own personal preference on the matter, and I look at that, my very first reaction is basically, why? Why? Right? That is my knee-jerk reaction, which is funny because that was also my reaction to the time travel thing. It was basically, why? What? Actually, yes, Manic. 60s version, but yes. Darkest Star Trek I know of? Probably Discovery? Well, no. Define dark. I know that sounds weird. But I've noticed most other people have a different definition of that word than I do. Yeah, tell the story of the Herc. How'd that be for fun? Tell the story of how the Klingons stopped being, pacifist agrarian culture. You want to talk about dark? Where's my notes? I recently worked on a DS9 episode. Give me a second. Here it is. You want to talk about dark? I have no idea what the name of this episode is. Oh, Cardassians. Name of the episode is Cardassians. Season 2, episode 5, I want to say? DS9? That's dark. To me. That's my definition of dark. Now, if you know the episode I'm talking about, great, I don't have to make my point. If you don't, that is an episode about children who are left behind and war orphans and limitations of politicians and politics and the victims of a regime. That's what that episode is all about. In that episode, we see just how many people's lives and how many people at different tiers of existence lives were ruined by the Cardassian Union and its policy of the Bajoran occupation. And I don't just mean the Bajorans. I've actually kind of already commented on this in an episode that I think is coming live in 2 days now. I hate you, Shadow Machine. Someone go kill Shadow Machine, just really quick. The Cardassians. The Cardassians are also victims of the Cardassian Union. Because there are really horrible things that people were forced to do, that people were coerced to do, that people started accepting, that some people started embracing, and of course some people just kind of had to live with. That's dark to me. That is a very dark episode to me. And I'm cool with that. It is a very mature adult look at a very serious topic that does not have an easy answer. Arguably, the episode in question doesn't even legitimately have a bad guy. Just a whole bunch of victims. And I will talk about that more in the episode I've already recorded in about a month or so when you get to that point. That's dark to me. Now, I've noticed some people, when they hear dark, what they mean is what I usually refer to as darkier and edgier. Now, darkier and edgier is what I refer to when a show or a fiction or a book or whatever basically introduced... what's that, Hazardous? Basically introduced dark elements in a more juvenile fashion in an attempt to grab attention or ratings rather than trying to do it as a storytelling point or to really examine a concept. Now, I have no idea if Discovery does this or not. I haven't actually watched Discovery, remember. I've simply been too filled with fear to do so. Thank you very, very much, Renegade. As ever, those Twitch Prime subs are hugely appreciated. Thank you. What was I saying? I don't know if Discovery does this or not, but I do actually have an explanation of a Star Trek work that tried darkier and edgier in a juvenile way. Enterprise. Seasons 1 and 2 of Enterprise were trying to be a dark Star Trek, and so they were darkier and edgier. And it's all over the place. I'm not even going to give specific examples, because, I mean, if you've seen the show, you know what I'm talking about. They straightened out a bit by Season 3, and Season 4 was awesome, and Season 4 was legitimately dark, rather than darkier. But early Enterprise, it just got juvenile. I can see where you're going with that, Hazardous. That's a good idea. I kind of like that. So yeah, I don't know what else to add to this general concept. I think you're right, Tazara, but I'll have to look into that more in depth because Rick Berman had way too much control over Season 1 and 2 of Enterprise, and that's all I'm going to say about that right now. He did. This is not a statement of opinion. He was the complete mainliner of Season 1 and 2 of Enterprise. Interesting, Darkrai. Anyways. Point being, point being, I can't come up with any example of something where lots of sex and lots of violence, lots of gore, lots of nudity would fit in Star Trek. But if I were to presume such a thing made sense, if I was to presume a situation in which there was a story that was good, at the very least good, and was presented in Star Trek, I'd have to really find myself questioning if that belonged. And I have no answers here. It's why I just kind of wanted to open this up for discussion with you guys. Yeah, that's true. We are no longer on Rebel stuff, so... No, Blue Wolf Alex. He totally cured assimilation. He cured the Borg. And you know what's a shame is that's one of the better episodes in Season 1 and 2 of Enterprise, in my opinion. Anyways, let me actually add one other thing, if I may. Now, just to give my final thoughts on this. I personally don't think nudity belongs in Star Trek. That is my opinion, and I am admittedly a prude. But I am not saying that I don't think sexy belongs in Star Trek. First of all, that would be incredibly hypocritical of me, because sexy has been in Star Trek since the original series. There's a reason they wore those damn skirts. I'm sorry. It's true. You know? But I really feel like legitimately going to the point of showing nudity or showing fake sex scenes is unnecessary. Because you can have sexy or implication without actually presenting it in such a manner, without going that final step. My opinion. Like... Yeah, the guys in TNG. Holy crap. Yeah, you know what? Dr. Crusher. I've admitted that one before. No shame in that one. Gates McFadden was, and kind of is still, a gorgeous woman. That would be interesting, Hazardous. I mean, lots of people have lots of sex in Star Trek. They kind of practice the whole free love thing. To the point where, in an episode I recently looked at on DS9, Melora. Anyone remember that one? I don't blame you if you don't. Melora actually has to clarify in a conversation with Dax that she doesn't mean a fling and sleeping with someone, that she's looking to start a legitimate relationship with someone, because casual relationships are really common in the future because STDs have been cured. This is not me stating this as opinion. This is stated fact as part of the canon. Whether that's good or bad is totally up to you. I don't care. The point is, I really don't have a problem with that so much as they bother to go somewhere with it, or try to develop in a direction, or make it be a revelatory part of the characters. And indeed, again, getting back to my core point, not showing the act. There's no need for that. My opinion. There's other ways to accomplish the same thing. What's the name of the android in What Little Girls Are Made Of? Someone help me out. Reach and flexibility. Lol. I know someone in chat knows this. Yeah, AIDS has been cured in Star Trek. This is not a joke. They have actually cured sexually transmitted diseases in Star Trek. With the one exception with Harry Kim, and even that they dealt with quickly and easily. Yeah, exactly. That's also true. If STDs were no longer a factor and pregnancy wasn't an issue in real life, you think we have a lot of sex now? Holy crap. No one knows. No one knows. Okay, I'm gonna have to look it up. I might be thinking of the wrong episode name. I'm not. I had the right episode. No, not Corby. That's the guy. Andrea. Someone do me a favor. If you don't know who I'm talking about, look up Andrea, or Andrea, or however the hell you're supposed to pronounce that. Andrea Star Trek. Just do a Google image search of that really quick. Here, I'll do it with you. Go over to images. Yeah, so you see that? That was in the original series. They actually like, they actually brought in some really legitimately talented people to the designers, to the costume designers of Star Trek. It's just almost a shame that most of the really legitimately impressive stuff that they designed was to make women look sexy while at the same time being incredibly awkward and unrealistic. But that is a thing that's in Star Trek, okay? Now, I'm not into that because I'm a prude. But I also have no problem with that being in my Star Trek, as long as it's not done too badly. I do think the catsuit for 7 of 9 was aggravating. Just my opinion. I also think that Troy's outfit was just ridiculous, but that's, again, that's a bit of an opinion thing. But, you get my point? Yeah, nowadays you couldn't really get away with that unless it was, you know, a mainstream, or not mainstream, wrong term, you know, a Showtime kind of a show. Yeah, that was an android, by the way. Funny little side fact. You ever want to think about how different culture was back in the 60s to now? So, one of the main points that they make with the Andrea android is that he orders her to kiss Kirk, and then he orders her to slap Kirk. And he says, see? There's no emotional connection. There's no significant in-depth there. It's just a machine following orders. The point he's making is that no one would want to have hot sex with a willing individual of whatever gender you're interested in because there's no emotion involved. Yeah, anyways. Moving on. Let's go ahead and move on, because I'm kind of done. I've rambled enough. I don't have an answer still. I really don't. But I think if they did someday, God, Lord knows this will probably happen someday, if they do ever come out with a sex and violence Star Trek, I will have to remember to not rail against it, purely because of the fact that it's sex and violence in Star Trek. A little bit, Dante, for two reasons. First of all, I can't quite... Here, let me chop off... Well, no, I'll answer this question, then I'll chop off the local recording. First of all, Dante, think about the fact that if you're doing... This is live action, assuming. So if you have a live action sex scene, you have two actors who are probably partially nude in a room with, like, at least 5 other people. Probably closer to, like, 20. And you've probably had to do multiple takes of this scene. And everything about that is pretty much the opposite of sexy to me. You know what I mean? Like, understanding and knowing that there's two strangers who are doing this sex scene who are moving in ways that are completely unreliable or just isn't how that works. And there's lots of people who are making sure they get just the right camera angle. They got to make sure the lighting's in the right direction. You know, that completely pulls it away from this. So yes, I will admit, when I see that kind of live action sex thing, it bothers me more than it does in video games. Because I can't distance myself from the reality of that. As for violence, I do admit that gore, specifically gore, not just violence, in real life stuff, with live action stuff, tends to get to me a little bit more. Partially because in Doom 4, at no point do I actually believe any... In fact, I've argued Doom 4 is not gore at all. Hey, Preacher. I don't believe Doom 4 is a gory game. I know that's a weird opinion, but I stand by it. Because Doom 4 is cartoonishly violent, right? It's not realistic. By contrast, I'm going to use a direct example. I'm just going to leave the thing up for this here. Direct example here. In a certain episode, I believe it's in Season 3 of Game of Thrones, there is a person whose head is crushed by someone's bare hands. I'm trying to dodge around spoilers here. Right there on camera. And it's just... And that's just... Whoa! Now, they do a decent discretion shot on that. But the way they present that and the way they show that, and yeah, gouging the eyes... Season 4, apparently, thank you. Gouging the eyes and crushing the skull. That's unpleasant. Now, I know that that's not a real person whose skull's actually crushed. I understand how makeup and effects work, but still, that is really, really gross. And again, I'm looking at actual people whose eyes are being gouged, or at least presented, and whose skulls are being crushed, at least as presented, and blah, blah, blah. And it's just, wow. Yikes. Good. You know? And there's other examples, too. I will also say, yeah, they did do the cutaway. They kind of had to. I mean, ignoring, you know, obviously they have no problem showing the gore, but for the sake of special effects, they did have to cut away. You can't actually crush that live unless they do a really, really good job with the model and the mask, or do a frame cut. Anyways, so in video games, I tend to not get that, unless the video game presents the violence as very realistic, which honestly, the vast, overwhelming majority of video games do not portray violence or sex in a particularly realistic manner. So it doesn't bother me as much. So, sorry, long rambling answer. Hi, I'm the lore runner. I talk too much. What was I saying? There's someone else I wanted to respond to. No, I'm not doing The Witcher 3. By the way, when we do the Witcher 3 lore run, I'm not doing the sex scenes, just so you know. Oh yes, Mass Effect, the sex simulator. The pencil trick is fine because, and this is going to sound weird, the pencil trick is implied. God, you really want me to talk about this? All right, one more discussion. One of the things that I am more okay with is implied violence. Let me give you a direct example that isn't the pencil trick, because I just watched Iron Man 1, so it's really fresh in my memory. There's a scene where a guy picks up a burning hot coal, and he goes over to someone and he says, "Open your mouth." Now that's horrifying. That's horrible. However, what would make me close the movie is if he then shoved the burning hot coal into the guy's mouth, and we get to see what that would be like, and how really, really gory and horrible that would be. But that's not what happens. Instead, he just brings the coal over and says, "Open your mouth." That's implied violence, which I'm much more okay with, especially since the implication can usually be used to affect the same effect that actual presented violence can do. This is true in real life as well as in fiction. So, the pencil thing, I'm going to make this pencil disappear. Bam! And it's gone. Now, we know what happened to that guy, and that's really horrible. But you know what would actually be horrible is if they showed it. If the camera then zoomed in, or we see the guy running around screaming insensate because he has a pencil jammed into his eye socket. That's really, really horrible. But they don't show it. And that is a very important distinction. I tried, Tigzar. It was all deliberate. It was all deliberate. You guys are too distracted, Tress versus Unifering, to think about the fact that I'm not going to do the sex scenes in Witcher 3. Anyways, I guess I could get rid of the spoiler thing and the current topic thing at this point. This also kind of gets back to my point. Now, granted, I am a prude. I will always admit that. Because, you know, I do think that needs to be presented up there up front to get across my predilections. However, I do legitimately feel that the implication or the lead up to or the presentation or the proper discretion shot is how you really get across the meat of showing sex and violence in fiction. I mean that sincerely. Let me give you another example. I bet most of you haven't even thought about this example. Star Wars Empire Strikes Back. Han Solo is tortured in that film. It's the kind of thing most people probably don't even think about. They don't really show it. They show him being lowered onto a really, really horrible looking device. And then we cut to outside and we hear screams. And sometime later, Han has to be carried because he's having trouble walking into the room where Leia embraces him. Now that's horrible. But that kind of discretion, that kind of presented in the background, that kind of don't actually show the unpleasantness, that works for me. And if I was to ever to really get into directing or video game production, that's how I would do something like that. Because that's, wow, you know? Yeah, they never even asked me questions. There's even the bit where Vader, one little side note, Vader leans in just to make sure everything's working right. You remember that? It's a tiny little bit. I imagine most of you have probably forgotten about it, but as he's being lowered onto the thing, Vader goes, just to make sure everything's going nice and right. I always like to personally think Vader's also kind of transmitting, like using the Force to transmit that pain as far as possible. Hey, Luke. Vroom, vroom, vroom. What do you find silly, by the way, Aethel? Yeah, I know, right, Leander? Yeah, you ever want to know how far Anakin Skywalker goes? He tortures someone to lure someone else there. Anyways, I'm going to finally chop off the local recordings. Let's go do that.